But if we were to ask you, disregarding what anyone else says, who is Lawrence Tijjani? What would you say?
I think that's a big question. And I think what I would say is, I'm just a guy trying to make it through this life, trying to have an impact on society. You know, I'm trying to be successful. I think that's simply who I am.
Lawrence Oluwadamilare Tijjani, 5th of August 1986, born in South East London. The Blue Bermondsey is where Lawrence's path begins. Growing up with his mum, dad and 3 younger siblings, Lawrence was in love with his estate, from the calves to the cages, the birth of a guy trying to make it. Budding with dreams and visions of something more grand, Lawrence always knew life was more than this.
Crazy pain. I remember crying, screaming, shouting, saying, take this pain away from me.
Collapsed, he hit his head on the table. I was thinking, what on earth is going on here? What just happened?
That particular time when my son was going through that, he doesn't want to see me.
I think I gave him very, very stern words that you need to change your life now for a tempo that suits you and where your health comes first.
A true story of resilience. One man's pain becomes his purpose.
If you're taking it way back, the first thing I kind of remember about the area was, this was the world, you know? I remember it was a community as well, in the sense that a lot of my friends, when I was growing up then, were in like touching distance.
Lawrence was obedience child when he was growing up. I remember vividly when I had Moiwa, he was 9 years old. Very obedient. I can send him to Tesco 10 times a day.
Yes.
From that sort of case.
Yes.
And he will not say no.
I have fond memories, you know, of literally being in a cage playing football and just being able to go over to Surrey Quays and, you know, you'd be out there doing, you know, shopping for your parents, but also just checking the girls that are out there too.
He is a very good boy, though, and he loves chatting, you know. When he go to Tesco, most oh, where's your mom? She's always chatting, that I can talk.
I remember a tower block, you know, like we lived in a tower block, and you'd walk into a tower block, and for some reason people liked me, you know. So like you have different people in the lift where you're waiting for the lift, you know, hi, how are you? How's your mum? You know, very much checking in actually, how are you doing? So going back to actually what I mentioned at the beginning, it was a real community feel.
This kind, responsible child being raised by a loving family would soon meet a test of character. It's the year 1997, and Lawrence is off to secondary school. Now, characters like Lawrence couldn't survive in the Geoffrey Chaucer School without adapting. Located in Elephant and Castle, Geoffrey Chaucer was one of the toughest schools in South London. Lawrence's mother constantly expressed her concern for his well-being in the school. The bad behaviour he's surrounded by is sticking and growing on him like bacteria. School reports are worsening, and by year 9, his mother thought it best she move him to a local school, St. Michael's.
My impression of him in terms of at school, I'm not sure that he was at school to actually get an education. It's not the impression that I got. Some of the people he was hanging around with when we were at secondary were not positive. He was getting himself into some dodgy dealings, never too dodgy. But yeah, not positive influences.
I just don't know what I was thinking. And like just results day, I was going in on results day and I was confident. Like I'd done no work for like, say, 3 years. Like I'm talking from year 9, done no work, just chilling, you know, mucking about. And I was just confident, you know. And I remember walking into school, speaking to people, and they were like, I was like, yeah, man, you got this, you got this. I'm telling people, you got this, you know. And I don't know what's waiting for me.
So when he finished his secondary school with FF, I was crying. Both of us were crying together, me and him. We hold each other. And the next he said to me, Mommy, I'm going to retake it again. And I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to show a good example to Murayo and Muriwa and Becky.
I remember going home to my mum and basically like scared, like gonna show her these results. And I remember her just going, not saying much, you know. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And I remember she's dropped this line, I have failed you, you know. So here's me, failed my GCSEs, and she's saying I have failed you.
Lawrence received an array of D grades and F grades in his GCSEs, apart from one, ICT. He then had to make a tricky decision concerning his future education.
Made a decision to go and resit my GCSEs. I went to enrollment desk and I showed the guy my results. I just remember the guy going, like rubbing his forehead and just going, you know what? I don't think maybe college is for you, you know. I think maybe you're better off doing something with your hands. And again, that was another powerful moment because I realized, you know, a powerful man is a man with choices. And he had actually pigeonholed me into a box based on my results.
I couldn't tell you about, I know Lawrence actually. You're just that really loud, aggressive speaking guy that was always seems to be kicking around the common
I
area.
met Lawrence at SFX. I started ABC ICT, and that's the class in which I met Lawrence.
I enjoyed working with computers, you know, started up my own web agency with Manuel actually.
You know, it was his business mind that kept ticking. How can we make money without having to spend much money, you know, especially as students? You know, our pockets were empty, you know. Using the skill sets that we had in our class, we then brought it into real life, you know, creating websites, real basic websites. If I was to start talking technologies now, you know, this is real basic. Initially, everything is hand-coded. You know, it was very early stages of web design.
So one of my friends had told me that somebody liked me, and I was like, oh, okay, who? And then she explained who it was, and I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't know him. I hadn't had a conversation with him, hadn't spoken to him, whatever.
Even now, I'm just smiling because I remember meeting her and I remember saying to the boys, that girl's fine. Like, she's fine, you know. And like then, like she had all these gold hoops and things, you know. And I was like, nah, this girl's fine.
He came over, introduced himself or whatever. And I was like, no, I'm not interested. I just want to focus at school. I just want to concentrate.
Yeah, I'm looking to do this. I'm looking to do this in life and do that in life. And I'm thinking, I'm only thinking about what I'm doing on Saturday. This girl's telling me, you know, she's looking to go to university and study this. She was very serious, you know, like already scoping me out if I've got any potential. I remember she goes, oh, so what A-levels are you studying? I was gone, She goes, what A-levels are you studying? I was like, oh, I'm doing GCSEs, okay.
I didn't even know that was a thing that people could do. Like I didn't even know it was possible at the time.
It took me a year. It took me a whole year to like even get her to go, you know what, I like you, you know. And that was probably the best thing for us because actually we became friends before we became boyfriend and girlfriend.
They've always been together.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it Lawrence with anyone else don't make sense. Sheridan with anyone else don't make sense.
No, Lawrence was the idol, man. He made it seem like, right, you know what, even if you get friend zoned or you're chilling, like you can always get the prize at the end.
A 17-year-old Lawrence was juggling GCSEs, A-levels, and a part-time job at M&S. To some, this would have been too much. But to Lawrence, challenge accepted. But just as our hero was finding his stride, a fierce obstacle has appeared ahead. It's Christmas. Lawrence has finished an evening shift at M&S and made his way home. And on this evening, things took a turn for the worst.
I'd come back and I was working at Marks and Spencer at the time. And come back home, I was tired.
It was December 2003.
A bit tired. Sat down, bantering a bit with Raf.
Morayo and Muiwa, both of you just finished decorating the house for Christmas.
I think I was watching Star Wars. Yeah, I was watching Star Wars. and I'm just chilling. And I remember, I think I said something to Raf, and then blur.
Who came to come and wake me up. Mommy, Dad is not feeling well. And I went to the sitting room. I saw my son. I said, what's this? I just ran out.
I just remember my dad trying to, I think it was perform CPR or like put him in a recovery position. And I just remember that so vividly. And I just remember my mum and my sister in particular were very like upset. Like my mum was hysterical at that time because obviously we was all worried and we was all concerned and we was like we don't want anything bad to happen to my brother and we were just scared.
I wake up when we're downstairs at the bottom of, like, I come round for a bit. We're at the bottom of our tower block and I'm seeing flashing lights. And I'm like, who's gone to hospital? You know, thinking, right, is that person okay? And obviously when I wake up now, I realise it was me going to hospital.
Lawrence has been diagnosed with idiopathic epilepsy. This is an umbrella term for a group of seizure disorders that have come about from abnormal electrical activity in the brain. A seizure disorder is idiopathic if, outside seizure activity, the patient has no structural brain abnormalities and otherwise ordinary brain function. This ultimately means we don't know the reason he's having the seizures. This has had a significant change in his life, as although his conditioning is not worsening, he's having seizures in the least ideal places, such as college classrooms and underground stations.
The first time I actually saw it in action, and this was in class. Collapsed, he hit his head on the table, was on the floor. I was thinking, what on earth is going on here? What just happened? Everyone gathered around him, ambulances, everything. Like, I remember that like it happened yesterday. And that was a real scary moment for me because it just happened out of the blue. I didn't know that he had any condition prior to. So that was my first experience of it. And that for me, I've never seen anything like that before.
Even the next day, they were like, oh, don't go to school, don't go to college, rest up. Because when you have an attack, like, my body is just literally, it feels like, the muscles just been ripped and it just hurts. Like, you're just in so much pain when you're recovering. And then I was like, you know what, no, I'm going to college. Mum was like, where are you going? I said, no, I'm going to college, And I get there and everyone, you can see, everyone's apprehensive. Like, they want to ask Lawrence, are you okay? But don't really want to ask. And when people ask, you're like, no, I'm good, don't worry, moving on, I'm good, don't worry.
Despite a lifestyle that some would use as an excuse to remain stagnant, Lawrence stayed focused on his target, finished college, and was granted a place at the University of Westminster, studying software engineering.
So that whole thing of results day, was happy about it. And that was actually me being very confident because I had put the work in, And I went off to University of Westminster, studied software engineering. So I secured a placement in tech, really good startup, but I had an attack and it lasted for a long period of time, essentially.
I can't remember what month it was, but I think it was maybe his second year of uni, I want to say. I just remember him calling me and he was really confused.
They had to sedate me, and then when I finally woke up in hospital, I actually thought I was back in college. So I thought it was 2 years ago back in college.
Not only had the seizure, I don't even know if it was in a public place now, I can't remember, but he'd lost his memory.
He would literally have a notepad just to write things down. And I'd never seen anything like that before. Where of course you're taking notes. If you're taking notes for something to remember it for later on, but literally everything that he was being told, he had to write down.
That was a really difficult and scary time because not only did he have exams coming up in a few months or a few weeks afterwards, it was a case of how do we know what he remembers from what he doesn't remember? And that's a question that you probably never really know. You don't know what you don't know.
Retrograde amnesia. Amnesia where you can't recall memories that were formed before the event that caused the amnesia. In this case, the seizure. Following this new diagnosis, Lawrence struggled to accept he was in university with a job in the city. He truly thought he was in college again. It was highly advised by loved ones to defer. The university also agreed to waive any fees for a repeated year. However, Lawrence rejected this offer and decided to face the setback head on.
Bless Sheridan, she actually sat down with me and helped me literally relearn the content. Not revise, relearn it. So she claims that she's done a part-time degree in software engineering.
Lawrence graduated with a 2-1 in software engineering. In spite of his hard work and determination, plus the assistance of Sheridan, Lawrence was forced to give up his placement, which he was to start post-graduating. This was as a result of his seizures, and it also having a knock-on effect on his confidence in public places. However, life would have it that Lawrence returns to the beginning, as all roads lead back to South London, Bermondsey.
Went and did my placement at my old school, St. Michael. The head teacher at the time started to see me speaking to these young people in the playground at break time and lunchtime. Because I'll go out into the playground and start speaking to them. And then she was like, Lawrence, you've got a calling, you know. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I think you should become a teacher.
It was very clear to see that he was very much about the kids and making sure that they had a quality experience of being in education, and a positive one at that. From what I understand, his own experiences of school weren't that great. And I think he just wanted to make sure that the students that were in his care got the best possible outcome.
So he became a head of year quite early on, but even before that, he was always, when he was teaching, and he was teaching IT, computer science, you could see that he was always looking for students to help them out in a kind of mentoring role before he became a head of year. And then once he became a head of year, that was a major part of his job.
At just 27 years old, Lawrence had progressed significantly in his career, from IT support to becoming a head of year and a head of faculty. The never give up attitude is continuing to outweigh the negatives of his health. On the other hand, this demanding workload is starting to have adverse effects as he struggles with the pressure. Things took a dreadful turn for the worse in the summer of 2014.
I remember it being the last day of term, and had seen the students off site. I was like, kind of, see you later. Don't see you lot for 6 weeks, you know. Goodbye, you know, enjoy. Go and be your parents' problems, you know. And I remember going up to my office, but then I just remember hitting my head going down on the desk in my office. I must have hit it pretty bad.
Lawrence suffered his biggest seizure to date. When he falls into this epileptic state, it usually averages about a minute or two. Any longer would need to be escalated to emergency services. On this day, Lawrence was in and out of seizures for 2 hours. Doctors are saying the worst, predicting a life full of mobility problems by his 30s.
I was going to hand you guys this.
Okay.
He was on the gurney exactly like that, strapped down. And normally after he had a seizure, he would talk to me, be a little bit drowsy, but he talked to me, and he wasn't really talking to me.
Yeah, I was an angry individual. Like, I was mad at the world.
A particular time when my son was going through that, he doesn't want to see me. It's like, what's this?
Wow, God, you're giving this to me now. I'm working hard. You know, I've dealt with that setback of failing on the right lines, the right trajectory, and you're putting this in me now.
I felt his pain, and I think Tan would probably feel his pain, because he wasn't the same person whom we knew, say, maybe some months before.
By the time I got to him here at this point in the hospital, he was in pain. And we hadn't had that before. That wasn't something that was part of a normal episode when he had seizures. Pain wasn't a feature. Drowsy, a bit sore, but like not pain.
Crazy pain. I remember crying, screaming, shouting, saying, "Take this pain away from me." It's like someone taking a chisel and hammer to both my kneecaps, constantly just going boom, boom, boom.
It was it was a very, very scary time. I mean, it took me right back to the first time I even saw it, you know, life-threatening. Something has to change.
You know, he understood that he couldn't go back to life as it was before. He had to do something different.
Teaching job, you know, it's good job, you know. Some people can handle it. Some people cannot handle the pressure.
You know, he'd forget words whilst he was teaching. We'd be having a conversation and he would just completely forget. And there were everyday things that were difficult for him that people were not seeing because he was hiding it.
The pressure is not good for him. I said, look, you have to leave this job. If I have to say I want a job, I'll give you all the money so that I leave this job.
I think I gave him very, very stern words that if you think you want to go back into the life that you had, I can't do this. You need to change your life now for a tempo that suits you and where your health comes first. And so he agreed. And then he had that whole period of trying to figure out what it is that he wanted to do next.
The road to recovery does not look bright at all, as Lawrence's mental state takes a huge dip. He's frustrated at the world, family, friends, everyone who thinks they understand but simply hasn't spent a day in his shoes.
There were some dark times where I went into a deep depression. The moment you get discharged and you go home, everyone thinks you're healed, right? You're good. But actually that's the hardest part, because people don't come around as much. And that's nothing against people, but people move on with life. You know, they've got work to do. And that was my darkest days, because I didn't have that 2 nurses around my bed. So actually, if I tried to go to the toilet, you know, I was stubborn. Again, not using my walking aids properly, not keeping my phone in my pocket, where I try and go to the toilet, legs will give way. I'll be on the floor until Shirley gets back from work, you know. And you can imagine what happens there, but it was that whole thing of like, I literally said to myself, what kind of life is this? What kind of potential husband can I be? You know? And I actually said one time, you know what, God, just take me, man. This isn't life. This isn't the life that I envision, you know? And then I was just like, yeah. And I remember went into myself, man, didn't speak to people, was angry at people, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done, man. That's literally what I was like. I'm done. So I was like, you know what, Lawrence? You've been put on this earth for a purpose. Keep going. Don't give up. You tell all the people around you never to give up, so why are you going to try and do that? And then literally started to talk about it, but push through. And that was the gear change was like, almost I would say, Lawrence 2.0, where you go, you know what? This has been put in front of me, but I'm never, ever going to give up. And while this heart is beating, I've got purpose.
Purpose. Lawrence knew this thing was bigger than him. He finally understood that one day he would need to share his story. The story of how he overcame. The birth of a simple blog, as he documents his recovery, titled, Just a Guy Trying to Make It.
Show the more vulnerable side, if I'm honest.
100%.
Because until that point, like I said, Lawrence has always been quite a strong, you know, proud, do anything for you. Yeah, that's probably the word. I didn't want to use it being Caribbean, but
Nigeria.
And I think it was through those kind of the posts and those sorts of bits you started to see maybe a window into his world.
That blog, it started to pave the way for him, because he started getting traction once he started talking about everything that he had been through. You know, being open and allowing others who don't quite have the strength to be open about it themselves to actually find solace in reading his story.
I couldn't walk. Like, the mobility was just like from 100 down to basically like 20%. Was consistently on walking aids. Like, to the point where I literally after leaving hospital, had to learn to walk.
There was a period of time, to help him bathe, to help him move around in the flat. That's something I had to do, and it was difficult because we were young. This isn't what we expected. This isn't what I signed up for.
That blog really let people in and understand actually what I was going through, and it was kind of maybe my call to help.
It's giving him a drive because he knows that there's other people out there that's probably experiencing the same thing or going through the same relationships with his brethren or his family or his girlfriend or his missus.
I remember he used to have his sessions in the water, hydrotherapy, and he didn't like it initially, but I remember I can't remember what movement he was able to do, but he was really pleased. It was just like the small milestones that you could see that he was really proud of, that he was able to do.
The real kind of tipping point for people was when I wrote a letter to depression. It was called, the blog piece called A Letter to Depression. And I can't remember it from the ins and outs of it, but the way I described it was essentially, you're an unwelcome visitor that's been in my house, taking my electricity, taking my gas, taking my energy, I've never invited you in, you just appeared here.
Lawrence wasn't afraid to open up, which was such a beautiful thing.
What I really saw in that period of time was actually Lawrence stepping up to, a potential new normal that had to happen in order for, him to be at his best for a longer period of time.
I mentioned previously that he perhaps had the group of people that he spoke to about the issues that he was going through. But instead of now being nice about it, to those who knew him, he decided to open up completely. It's time-stamped, it's online. People could go right back to the beginning and see his story, his journey right up to today. He's been very diligent in keeping up with his blogs.
In this marathon with hurdles, another situation has presented itself. In regards to Lawrence's career, something has to change.
I made that hard decision to leave teaching. And it was a painful decision because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Things didn't fall into place straight away. It was like, okay, good thing I was saving. So I did the web design and that was my passion. But what else can you do? How do you still work with young people? How do you, do other bits? And I thought, actually, something's missing. Like, I still want to work with young people. How do we go about doing this?
That something missing was the new endeavour of Just a Guy. Once again, Lawrence finds himself back at St. Michael's where his career in education started, but this time to mentor students.
I think when I first met Lawrence, he was inquisitive, right? He was on a journey to want to learn more about this Google thing that he had been using at the school when he was teaching. And I think perhaps looking for the next step beyond teaching, something which was still going to be fulfilling, but also something that he could have more control over how he worked and when he worked.
He was like, I want to get a load of young people in. We had a good connection with the Google kind of team, the Google for Education team and the Applied Digital Skills team. So kind of leveraged some of those key people and got the space at Google's Academy and got a little bit of funding, I think, for that as well. So we did that step up with digital skills, which is kind of, I'd done loads of trainings with him, like him and I doing a sort of Google for Education training. But this was the first time it was like his own Just a Guy stuff.
So Lawrence and I met because they launched the Lighthouse Project at Google. It was a co-partnership. And it was through the Just a Guy Foundation, and they were looking for volunteers. And I signed up and I got selected, and I was really, really excited. But I was told I had to do this like DBES check. I absolutely knew nothing. And I'm from the US. And so I signed up for office hours, and it was Lawrence and me. And he just went through, he must have been on like a really exhausting day where he was just like, okay, these are the things you need to do. And I'm like, wait a second, like you started this? This is your thing, your project, your foundation. Like, why are you doing this? I have a tremendous amount of respect for people who've overcome challenges and who are resilient and who have a vision and are very clear on their why. And so when I initially connected with Lawrence, it was very clear he was that someone who, very similar to me, was driven by their why.
The Lighthouse Project helped me because I was able to gain the skills to explore my creativity. At the end of the Lighthouse Project, I created a poem, which I was able to then perform at Google, spoken word poem in front of around 100 people, I believe was at the event. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without the skills that I had gained previously on the project.
Lawrence's story affected me as it really showed me how in life you can never really give up because there's always something good waiting for you on the other side. Like, don't give up, like, no matter what you think is bringing you down, just always have faith and hope that you'll get through whatever is stopping you at that moment in time.
My hope for JAG is that it reaches many, many more young people. It has so much potential. The story, the idea behind why it was created is so powerful that I want JAG to be able to reach its full potential by reaching many, many more young people.
I think what I admire most about Lawrence day to day is his integrity. And there are loads of different parts to that. But as an example, if he says he's going to do something, it will get done. And it might not be that that idea comes to life tomorrow. But if we think about Just a Guy, this is something that's been on his mind, that's been so close to him for so long. And so to be launching it in an official way now and really going for it full time after moving from teaching, going through the battle with his health, into becoming a trainer, setting up his own business alongside a business that he already had, taking a gamble. You know, all of these things are things that he said he would do. And every single thing that I think I've spoken to him about where he said that, he's followed through with.
Now, if you were going to use just 3 words to describe Lawrence, what would you use?
3 words.
I think it's hard to do it in 3 words, but to summarize it,
He is very particular. He's ambitious.
human,
Determined.
inspirational,
Brave.
Motivated, but very strong-headed.
Is inspirational.
humble, he's a great networker. Role model? There is that one word.
Very, very motivational.
Hardworking.
Passionate.
Have we used the word of resilience as well?
He's resilient.
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 I think resilience.
He's totally resilient.
Resilient. People and things that are resilient are able to recover easily and quickly from unpleasant or damaging events. A word that is so etched into the fibers of Lawrence. A word so fitting. But what's the difference between Lawrence and me? What's the difference between Lawrence and you? Nothing. Just a guy. And now he is tasked with giving back. The Just a Guy CIC, an enterprise focused on improving the social mobility of young people, predominantly from underserved communities.
What is Just a Guy?
I started the Just a Guy blog because I was just a guy trying to make it through the most painful time in my life. It's now so much more than that. It represents the effort that we all have to put in order to be successful. Just a Guy is a non-profit social enterprise. I wanted to reconnect with my passion of supporting young people, showing them the world extends beyond their postcode, if they are willing to put the work in. I am passionate about providing young people with access to networks of advice, support and mentoring, giving them the tools and skills to drive their own social mobility. That is my purpose.